Paul! Paul! Come here! Come quick! Allison's shout ricocheted down the driveway like a kettle smacked awake. Her shoes squeaked the rhythm of panic on concrete. Paul, who had the patient grin of someone who'd coaxed 3 toilets and a marriage back to working order, strolled up with the easy gait of a man who knew where the toolbox lived and where the courage to bargain was kept. He squinted at the house and then grinned in that exasperated way that says, well, at least it isn't a leaky roof, today. The north side of the vinyl siding looked as if a tiny, enthusiastic forest had taken to urban living. A fuzzy velveteen green spread across tan panels in a stubborn botanical protest. It was not subtle. It was a statement. We were here first. If that's our worst problem, Paul said, half laughing, half stunned, we did pretty well. Free landscaping, right? Allison, who handled other people's complaints for a living, but had not expected to be negotiating with nature, bounced from foot to foot. It's green. The listing said tan. Tan? Not moss opera. You're looking at art, a voice said from the shadow of the eaves, soft, damp, and impossibly pleased with itself. Allison and Paul turned. There, along the seams where rain liked to tuck itself for gossip, a patch of algae shimmered, tiny and smug. If plants could tap a foot, this one would have. It did the next best thing. It left a little wet note stuck to the siding where rain dribbled in tidy lines. Note, damp in a looping hand. Hello. I'm Algae, A for short. I did not arrive by whim. I am the north side patina, the green sweater the house forgot it owned. I keep the walls company when the bank plays the blues. Soft wash me, and I shall bow politely into the lawn. Paul read the note aloud, smiling like a man who'd found a punchline. Soft wash, no scorched earth theatrics. Allison blinked. You can write? Algae rustled, olive laughter in its green throat. I can write. And procrastinate. And look fabulous on vinyl. Mr. House, an old porch-leaning bungalow with a voice like clapboard and a memory for every season, joined the conversation with a pleased creak. A patina, dear Allison, not a plague. It's called character by people who drink wine in oak barrels. Patina, Allison repeated, tasting the word like a new recipe. Sounds fancy. Vinyl ages like a brave cardigan, Paul said, rubbing his hands together. Fixable, purchasable, and occasionally dramatic. Inside the house, the timber bones were honest. There was a kitchen with a hopeful hum to the sink, floors that remembered better shoes, and a basement that coughed up secrets, but none lethal. Still, the algae on the siding hogged attention like a guest who thinks they've RSVP'd to live there. Algae stretched its microscopic tendrils and offered commentary like anyone with a stage presence. Cookies for negotiators. Compost for poets. Paul, who had years of bargaining experience, a soft spot for fixer-uppers, and the sort of optimism that treats problems like puzzles, threw on his invisible tool belt. Lesson 1 in house ownership, he announced, as if imparting the secret handshake of suburban survival. Bargaining is a dance, not a duel. We waltz a price down. We don't wrestle a number into submission. Allison, folding her arms, tried on skepticism like a stiff coat. You make it sound elegant. It is elegant, Paul insisted. Ask, pause, offer, counter. Bring numbers. People respect math. Also, bring cookies. Mr. House says cookies help. Mr. House creaked in agreement. Cookies are versatile. Also, don't bring a pressure washer unless you want the siding to file for divorce. Algae stuck another damp sticky note to the panel. Tip: ask for a no-bruise guarantee. They did their homework like conspirators. Paul pulled out his phone like a magician revealing a trick. Get at least 3 quotes. Itemized estimates. If they whisper materials fee, ask what materials. If unicorn tears is mentioned, politely decline. All right, Allison said, swatting down a laugh. Unicorn tears are expensive. Exactly. Paul's grin widened. Bundle services. If they'll wash and do gutters, they might shave a chunk off the price. Offer off-peak timing. Offer cash, honest cash. It's mundane but effective. The realtor hovered like a helpful seagull, clipboard ready. North exposure is actually a thing. Some people pay to look rustic. Shabby chic meets suburban vintage, she said, the words rolling like well-practiced adjectives. Jot that down. Includes complimentary compost potential, Paul muttered. They rehearsed scripts. Paul played the contractor, deep voice, reasonable posture, the kind of man who respects a schedule. Allison practiced being charming and firm. Good morning, soft wash, $450, Paul offered, being the unreasonable contractor with theatrical perfection. Allison made a face that suggested her budget had fainted dramatically. $450? My bank account just left a note. We're not compatible. I can do $300, cookies, and a glowing review. Algae interjected with chlorophyll-based sarcasm, don't yelp too soon. Lawyers of leaves advise caution. Paul slapped his palm to his forehead, not for show, but to teach. Too quick with the yelp. Instead, ask about timing. You can do it this afternoon. Off-peak discounts are real. Then offer $350 cash if they'll include gutter cleaning and a 6-month mildew guarantee. Allison tried the script. Her voice was steady, practiced. $350. Gentle wash, gutters cleaned, 6-month guarantee, cash at the end. The contractor, Paul's practice stand-in, stroked an imaginary beard and bargained back. I can do $340 if you pay cash today and promise I won't have to negotiate with your neighbor about shrubbery. Algae wrote a new note. Guarantee or gratuity, not graffiti. On the day the soft wash crew arrived, the house held its breath, siding as stage, gutters as curtains. The hose whispered, psh, swoosh, and the sprayer bowed like a barista pouring the perfect stream. Algae surrendered in soft green confetti, splotch swish, psh, puff, drifting to the lawn to start a second life as compost. The contractor, true to the bargain, included gutter cleaning. Allison paid cash with a theatrical flourish. Paul clapped like a man who'd just taught someone to microwave confidence. That's lesson 2. Walk away like you meant it, then come back as if you had to, Paul recited, proud as a coach whose player finally caught the ball. Once the siding gleamed modestly tan again, less a costume, more a restored face, the neighborhood took notice. Mrs. Garza leaned over the fence like a benevolent snoop. They did something magical. The house looks like it's wearing fresh clothes, she said, handing over a pie because pie is the unofficial currency of neighborly diplomacy. Allison stood on the porch as if the house had just been baptized. It feels ours, she murmured. Like the house finally has permission to be loved. Mr. House creaked in that way furniture does when it means pride. Permission is like paint, applied slowly, but once dry, it sticks. Algae's afterlife was quiet and practical. The green confetti that had flurried onto the lawn found new purpose in a compost bin kept by an obsessive-friendly neighbor. Snacks of banana peels and coffee grounds welcomed the algae with a noise like plop, decomposition, like gossip, prefers privacy. Weeks later, Allison planted basil, mint, and cilantro in a sunny strip by the kitchen window. She poked gloved fingers into the soil and found, with a small delighted gasp, a dark, rich patch where the algae had gone to ground. Thank you, random compost, she said aloud, smiling at an absence. Paul, leaning on the fence like a man who trades life lessons for free advice, nodded. See? Economies of green. Soft wash today, pesto tomorrow. It's life cycle management. Word of the house's transformation spread in the kind of quiet gossip that births block parties. Neighbors stopped by with paint chip advice, casserole recipes, and unsolicited opinions about porch lights. Couple 2 doors down brought catalog recommendations and asked to know the contractor's number, which Allison shared with the practiced generosity of someone who had learned the value of barter. The contractor came back to read paint swatches like a jeweler inspecting stones. This one reads quiet dignity. This one says open and friendly. This one is too cheerful for a house with secrets. Allison chose compromise, trim and crisp white, body in a color that pretended to be modest but was secretly smiling. At a small, raucous block party, where charcoal smoke mingled with ambition, Allison tried a new social experiment. Accept a compliment graciously and then ask for a favor. Thanks! Do you know anyone who can hang a shelf crooked but intentionally? She asked a neighbor. Laughter, a name, a recipe for lemon-roasted zucchini, and the beginning of community. Mr. House settled into nightly routines with the smug contentment of someone who finally owned the look he'd been aiming for. Porch light flicked on at dusk like a polite eye. Curtains waved in the windows as if practicing their good manners. The house became a small stage of ordinary dramas. And me, Algae, now in compost and no longer on the siding, became a quiet myth in the earth. Seedlings pushed up with new courage where the compost lay. Tiny beetles convened councils about soil quality. Basil grew glossy and aromatic, a living thank you note. If you bent close on a calm morning and were the sort of person who listens to small things, you might have heard a faint, soggy echo tucked under a gutter lip. Gentle hands, softer hearts, occasional apologies. The town's children told each other that the house had once worn a green sweater and been saved by negotiations and cookies. They acted out the saga with toy hoses and improvised gutters, learning early that charm and a well-timed pause are often better than a high-pressure nozzle. Months folded into one another. Allison grew confident with a phone and coupons. Paul continued teaching 5-minute lessons in household diplomacy. Mrs. Garza kept a ready pie and an opinion on paint. The contractor found more work than he'd expected. The house, once streaked and sighing, became both shelter and story. It wore its new paint like armor softened by humor. One evening, as the sun folded itself behind well-painted eaves, Allison sat on the porch with a basil sprig between her fingers. Paul lounged in a folding chair, satisfied. Mrs. Garza brought cookies in a tin. Mr. House creaked happily, as if toasting with a timbery cheers. "You did well," Paul said, handing her a cookie. "You bargained. You learned. You paid cash like a seasoned negotiator." Allison laughed in that small, astonished way people do when they realize they have grown. "We did it," she said. "You helped." Mr. House helped. Even the algae played a part. If algae could be smug in compost, it would be. Plink, plop, sprout. And if you ever come across a house that looks too tidy to have ever worn green, imagine the small rebellions that whispered over its siding. A patch of algae, a negotiation. The hiss of a soft wash, the clink of cash, a contractor's concession, a pie shared over the fence. There is life under varnish, and sometimes history smells faintly of compost and lemon zest. So if you need to bargain for a service someday, be polite, be prepared, and always, always bring a small snack. It calms the soul, oils the conversation, and sometimes, if you're lucky, gets you gutters cleaned for free. Formerly of the North Siding, compost-bound and content.